And we are live streaming.
Okay, great. So very good evening and welcome to the second Audit and Governance Committee of 2026. It's Wednesday, the 25th of February this evening, and we are commencing the meeting at a slightly later start time due to the season of Ramadan to accommodate members, officers and the watching public. This meeting is being live streamed on Newham's YouTube, so welcome to everyone and anyone who is viewing online this evening. We have a very substantial agenda. But before we begin, I'd like to just go across some meeting hygiene and etiquette, if I may. So turning to those who are joining us remotely this evening, please ensure that your camera is turned on when and if you speak. And please indicate your wish to speak using your virtual hand, and the clerk will monitor the screen for that. Please also note that the chat function on Zoom will not be used for questions or answers, but you may communicate with the clerk if, for example, there is any issues with the sound. Those of you joining this evening in the chamber, please indicate your wish to speak by raising your hand. Please ensure that all questions, follow-ups and supplementaries are directed and addressed via myself as chair. May I also take the opportunity to remind members and officers to speak up, speak clearly, project your voice into the chamber this evening so that the clerk and the public can hear you. And given some of the time pressures of this evening, if I could ask for some conciseness, some clarity and brevity where possible. And if you're referencing any item in a report, could you please try and endeavour to provide the page number so that we may all turn to it and understand that reference. So as I said, we have a very large agenda and we must vacate the town hall by 10 p.m, no later. So this evening we will take most reports as read. I contacted members recently to let me know in advance on any particular line of questioning. So thank you very much for those responses that I received. I have agreed to receive an urgent report from the monitoring officer this evening, which is item 16. It's the terms of reference of this committee. This needs to be agreed by the committee before it is considered at full council. So we will move to agenda item 16 once we've covered across agenda item 7. Additionally, since the publication of the agenda, I have, as chair with confirmation from Councillor Poole, the vice chair, decided to defer items 8, 9 and 10 to the meeting of the committee on the 11th of March. And as such, officers for those items have been down. Yes. We're not going to do introductions this evening, but when addressing the committee for the first time, please all do try to introduce yourself. And I want to make it clear as well that no question is a silly question. If it's on your mind, then it is likely on a resident's mind. And that's how we ensure transparency across the borough. So thank you very much. Let's turn to the agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and substitutes. I've received apologies from councillors Anovo, Alam and Islam. I've been advised of one substitute member this evening. Welcome, Councillor Rush. Are there any other apologies for absence from members?
Apologies from Councillor McCormack for lateness.
Item number 2, declarations of interest. So to those members who are present physically, are there any disclosable declarations of interest that you wish to share? No. Item number 3, minutes of the last meeting. So members are requested to consider and agree the accuracy of the decisions and minutes of the last meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee, which was held here on the 14th of January 2026. Are there any matters of accuracy? And therefore, are the minutes agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Thank you. And item 4 is the actions log. So the committee is asked to note the contents of the actions log. Since publication, an answer to action AC280 has been circulated. And I understand that Councillor Poole had a further query on the reply, which officers are considering, and a reply will follow.
Yeah, I queried the complete answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was insufficient, detailed enough, and it was sufficient.
Yeah.
I've gone back to the comments, and hopefully that will suffice the committee, Chair.
That noted in minutes. Thank you. So are there any further questions on the actions log? No. So to members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands as the report noted? Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we'll now consider the substantive agenda items. So item number 5 is delivering the best value for our residents, January 2026 quarterly report. So I'm taking the report as read, and I'll be allocating 5 minutes in the first instance to this item. Are there any questions on the report?
Yes, I have, Chair.
Yes.
Would the officers like to introduce the report first? Any areas they might want to highlight to us, or do you want to go straight to questions via you, Chair?
In the interest of time,
Right,
you can go straight to questions.
Okay.
That would-
I've got a question. I'm trying to find it here. It's in typical. I can't find it when I have my finger on it. I think it's improving resident experience. There's a reference here to, I think it's from memory, 53% of residents feel good about place. Okay. Now, in previous years, we have not used that as a metric to talk about resident experience. The things we have used, and the 3 questions are, does the council provide good value for money? And in 2023, 24% people said the council does. The second question, which we normally use, is, are residents satisfied with the way the council runs things? And in 2023, that was 29% of residents. And the other one we normally use is, residents can influence decisions on the council, 21%, as in 2023, both referenced in the cabinet report from last year and in the presentation overview. And my question, Chair, is, look, I think Newham has done some good work, but I think in the realms of consistency and transparency, need to be consistent. So we show all the good and the bad, and more importantly, the progress from a baseline. And my helpful suggestion, Chair, is perhaps we go back to using the questions we normally use rather than that one. But that's just a comment, Chair. That's more one of nuance, less so than factual accuracy.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could respond to my question. My name is Paul Martin. I'm the interim chief executive at Newham Council, and the piece of work that we're considering here is the council's evolving response to the government Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government's Best Value Notice, which was put in place in May 2025 and is due to be reviewed by the Minister in May 2026. The report that you've got here is for this committee's information, is a report that went to the Cabinet and to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee last month. So it's really here to complete a sort of a cycle of relevant committees that would want to be cited on the work. And indeed, coincidentally, we had a progress meeting with MHCLG today, this afternoon, with MHCLG officials, which takes place every month with MHCLG officials, and every quarter it's place. So it's closely monitored by MHCLG, who obviously are taking an interest in the council's progress. So moving to council, that's by way of kind of context. Moving to Councillor Paul's question, I think he's gone to a metric which is probably, I think you're right, not the best metric to give insight into the trajectory of resident perception of council effectiveness. So fundamentally, I agree with the point that the metric of the residents think that the area is one that they, I can't remember the exact wording, but one that they feel good about. That's about the area to which the council is a contributor, but not the sole contributor. And it isn't as precise as other measures that Councillor Paul referred to, like whether the council offers value for money. And there are a couple of others that Councillor Paul referred to that might be seen, I think rightly, as more precise measures. Now, at the point at which this report was prepared, we didn't have the most recent survey, which we now do. So we now have, we're now able to populate our, what is a continuing piece of work that's continuing to evolve. We're able to populate it with current metrics of actually what residents think now, along with a load of other data that we've got, what residents think of the council now. And I think as a consequence of Councillor Paul's suggestion, we'll probably revert to make sure that we're using the best metrics to give insight to council performance, resident view of council performance. We have tried to use ones that have been tracked consistently over every survey, because sometimes questions come and go depending on the circumstance. And there are some questions that are asked monitored by the Local Government Association nationally, which is helpful as well, because one can compare ourselves not just with Newham in the past, but councils nationally. So it's like a two-way benchmark. It's sort of how do we compare to other local authorities? How do we compare to Newham in the past? So we can certainly go back and make sure that we select the most appropriate metric. I mean, I think I'm conscious of time, I won't speak for too long, but just to reassure the committee, in no way is our interest in trying to put a more positive sheet on the council's performance than is warranted. We won't be doing that. It'll be a complete and reasonable overview of the council's progress, but also areas where we still need to work, because we know that we're not at the point that we wish to. So when the final response comes, it will be the best effort we can make at a rounded view of the council's current progress.
Thank you. A follow-up question, if I may, actually. Just for clarity, is there a one-page dashboard or overview of metrics that are tracked over a period of time, where a resident could get a quick? I mean, I appreciate the need for detail.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Paul raises an important point around some metrics that I think most residents would be keen to understand and see.
Yes. It's a great question. There is a plan. There is a plan on a page in the deck.
Yeah.
So there's a plan on the page, but then if you then said, well, where is it RAG rated and so on? I think that's something we probably need to work on so that we can produce something that's fair and balanced, but comprehensive. Sometimes it's quite hard. So in an area like governance, which was one of the areas the council was criticised for in the best value notice, the features in the best value notice, it's not easy to get to a precise metric, but we'll do our best. Thank you. Yeah.
Through you, Chair, I was just going to say, plan on a page is on page 4 of the slide. So the timeline for residents on page 5.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any further questions, John?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Referring to 4.13 about the work you've commissioned on sort of staff culture from Nicholson.
Yeah.
Pride.
Yeah.
I just wondered, it would be good to understand how the analysis from that work on staff culture is going to be fed into learning and improvements.
Certainly. So I can say something about that because we now have the product of that work. So Nicholson McBride have done work to diagnose the council's current officer culture. It's looked at officer culture rather than the political environment, and they've done it very comprehensively. They've analysed the culture as they see it at the moment. They've taken the values of the council as they exist at the moment, and then talked to a large number of staff, particularly senior staff, about how staff see us, and what they've done is to both. This will come to members. It will come to this committee. What they've done is to describe the positive things to build on, the challenges that we need to address, and then a proposed route map, which I think points to your question of how we get from where we are to where we want to be. Because the culture, although it has strengths, it has an area, a number of weaknesses of things that we need to work on. And Nicholson McBride have proposed a process through which we address those. And, I'll say here that, our suggestion as officers is that we plan for that to be implemented, that route map, immediately after the elections, when we have a new mayor and new council, because you'll always get a burst of new energy and a new sense of direction at that time. So you'll see all of that at your next meeting.
Great, thank you. Councillor Chadwick.
So we were told a few community ago, the previous chief executive, that they would explore the exit interviews of senior directors. Has that been done as part of the process? I talked to previous that left, but why they left, and Are there any?
Are they, can I just check I've heard it properly? So the question is, have Nicholson McBride talked to the directors who've left? I don't believe they've done that. No, I think they've talked to the existing directors. I don't.
Might be more beneficial to talk to the ones who've left to figure out.
Well, yes, I mean, it's an interesting point. I suppose they're most interested in how things are now. And yeah, I mean, but the fact is they haven't done that, is the answer.
Does that answer your question?
It answers it.
So it's concerning. I mean, retention's about looking back at what went wrong, not what things are currently. So people might be happy if they join a job, for example. If you just talk to your new directors now, they're obviously going to be really happy that they just started. Might be more beneficial to the ones who were in that post.
And if I may, if I recall correctly, looking back at previous meetings from the last 12 months, there was a suggestion that exit interviews would be reviewed and scanned and
That's a different question.
Right.
So the question of exit interviews is different to I thought the question was whether Nicholson. So they're two different things. So certainly exit interviews should have been undertaken. But the Nicholson McBride work didn't talk to directors. Sorry if I misunderstood.
But they have looked at exit.
I mean, in most cases they would have done. In some cases that might not have been possible, but it's good practice too, certainly.
A point of clarification, if I may, is the exit interview process something that's standardised? So much of the private sector that would obviously be standardised, and then you could compare and contrast. Is that the case here?
Yeah, I mean, the HR will make sure that there's a process in place. I don't know if there's anybody who can talk to what that looks like, but there'll be a process in place to make sure that everybody who is offered it, you can offer it, it might not be taken up.
Of course, yeah.
So we can't compel that. We'll always make the offer of it, and it's good practice to carry it out.
Thank you. Councillor Paul, and then
I'll give way to Maria.
If I may, Maria Christophe, interim Chief Executive Change and Improvement and Corporate Director of Resources and Section 151 Officer. Just in terms of your question, Councillor, about why people that have left have not been interviewed, I think things have moved on so far that actually focusing on whether things are working now is much more important to us in terms of this organisation than understanding where we've come from. We need to understand how to move forward and keep moving. Things have moved on quite a lot. There are a number of.
You know, extent that we can't move on without looking at what went wrong in the past day.
Chair, this is not, the Nicholson McBride work is not a diagnostic of what went wrong in the past. It's an assessment of where we are now, what we need to do going forward. So it's not a backward looking evaluation of what's happened in the past. That is not what work is.
If I may, I feel that there's probably some further questioning or understanding that you might like to achieve. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest that we do that over email, if that's okay. And if we can action or minute an action for officers to kind of give some more clarity over that. And then we can speak in the coming weeks to get that clarity. That's important.
So on that, if it helps, we can take Councillor Chowdhury's responses and ensure that there's some commentary in the minutes for you, just to record the conversation that's happened.
That'd be helpful.
Responses. So we'll ensure that's in the minutes to got an aid memoir for next meeting, but it also just records Councillor Chowdhury's concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Paul, and this will be the last question on this item.
Really, some small comment. Look, I understand it's important to look where we're going, but there was a sort of, I think it was a Bob Marley song. You need to know where you're coming from to go forward, right? And if you don't know in sport, if you don't know why you've made a mistake, you can't improve your performance. And it's a real point I want to make, and I'm going to overlay it with the LGA peer review, which is in the report. Look, we've had a high number of NDAs, billions of pounds have been shelled out, and we have to pay off the CEO last year of a light bit of chunk change. That is not an organisation full of happiness and light and lovely culture. So I would hope in all the report which are coming forward, we are brave enough and transparent enough to appreciate why we got to such an awful place, and then we can move forward. And I think it's very important we do that. I don't believe in this sort of Panglossian thing. Let's not look back in the past, because I tell you what, we're going to repeat it. Culture is a long-term thing. And a comment I'm making, Chair, and I will conclude, can we not just, you can't forget the past. And I just hope going forward, We acknowledge what we did in the past, how we got there. Because an organisation with NDAs, millions of pounds being shelled out to people, and a secret meeting to pay off the last CEO does not tell me this is an organisation of a healthy culture. So I just hope we're adult enough to acknowledge where we are and put it on a piece of paper so people that come after us can learn and not repeat the mistake of the past. Because we're in danger of repeating the mistakes of the past, because we won't talk about the past. Just a comment, Chair, but I've been in several meetings in the last couple of months. The answer to council challenges has always been the same. We must look forward.
Yeah.
I'm slightly uncomfortable, actually.
That's noted, and we'll take that action to ask officers how we're going to draw upon the past and make sure we don't make those mistakes moving forward. But in the interest of balance, because some specific examples were just raised, Councillor, if any of the officers would like to speak to any of the points that Councillor Paul made.
I mean, I think that when you see the Nicholson McBride work, you won't believe that this is a Panglossian effort to say, let's not talk about root cause analysis.
Okay.
Root cause analysis is in there. So it describes not necessarily historical events. So it's not a chronology of the past.
Yep.
What it does do is to identify the issues that people perceive and feel now. And obviously an element of that, significant elements of that, is how the council got into difficulties in the first place. So I think when you see the final have some level of assurance, it's not an effort to say that it began in March 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on from that item. So the recommendation is that the committee note the update that was considered at Cabinet in January 2026 on the 20th. So may I see by a show of hands, is the recommendation noted? Thank you very much. So item 6, the annual governance statement 2024-2025. And just a point of clarity, that the annual governance statement is on the supplementary agenda pack 3, is the most up-to-date version. I believe it says revised final on the cover page there. In the interest of time, I'm going to take the report read and we'll allocate 15 minutes in the first instance. So we will move straight to questions. And I will take the first question, if I may. And I'd like to ask officers for the reasoning and a bit of context and some flavour on why the annual governance reissued in full last night and what changed from that first version.
Good question.
Chair, I'm Janie Berry. I'm the Interim Director of Law and Governance and the Council's Monitoring Officer. I'm accompanied this evening by my colleague Artemis Cassie as well, who has had much longer involvement in the drafting and the consultation on the annual governance statement than I have, by virtue of I only arrived here in September. The annual governance statement was circulated in draft form and published last June. And as the closer we got to this meeting, the annual governance statement has been through the external audit review process, and we received additional commentary from external audit by my colleague Munir around updates which external audit felt were essential as part of the annual governance statement. It's not unusual to receive updated requests on the annual governance statement because it is a living document, and governance changes over time. So this reflects the 24-25. But when you look at the key governance from page 19, was at the time, there was an update that was provided to the point of publication, but we've provided further updates to February 2026. So to try and make it as recent as possible. So I don't want to do external audit any disjustice. I'm just going to highlight the questions that we were asked to review. So using old page 11, we were asked to comment on the audit reports of the Audit and Governance Committee for 2022-2023. And there's a commentary on there added that plans are in place to address both these weaknesses. That was on that paragraph. Under the Treasury Management paragraph, we were asked to add commentary there, organisational assurance, and commentary on external audit. And then, as I say, there was reference on the updates for the key governance concerns provided. So that was a stopgap in time just to make sure it came up to date. But I'm sure my colleagues from external audit are present this evening. They may want to expand a little bit more, but that is the reason for the late republication, which is to ensure that this is as up to date as possible for consideration by the committee this evening.
Thank you. So before we move to the colleagues joining us online, just a point of clarity from my perspective. So this is a kind of last minute adaptation that was done in the interest of providing the most up-to-date picture and clarity, as opposed to reconciling any errors or issues.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Who would like to come in from external audits?
I think Hayley may wish to.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So Hayley Clark, I'm an audit partner at EY, and I'm responsible for signing the opinion on the financial statements. So good evening to everyone in the room tonight. No, I don't really have much more to add to what's just been outlined. It was purely just to make sure that it was brought up to date and that the findings coming out from our audit work around the significant weaknesses that were identified had just been updated for the current year.
Okay, thank you very much. Right. Any questions, Councillor Paul?
Yeah, just a question, Chair, just to inform you. I had a detailed conversation with the monitoring officer about the aspect of the report, and the section is down to the legal section about governance. I'm challenging and querying, for that matter, I will not be voting for this report, Chair. And I feel it's not correct, although the monitoring officer will say it is legally correct. It says here a claim was lodged by at the employment tribunal by the executive mayor against the council. The claim alleged sex and race discrimination against Newham Council arising from an alleged matter at a council meeting in 2022. Chair, I was at that meeting in 2022. The issues of the mayor's tribunal against the council arose because the chair of the standards board wrote to the mayor about her conduct. That is why the court case occurred, not because of the meeting. But I have an agreeable, disagreeable discussion with the monitoring officer, and we disagree. It also says in the next paragraph, Chair, the council robustly defended the claim. No, it didn't. On the council server is legal advice obtained by the council, by external counsel, saying that the mayor had no claim whatsoever, no financial duty was owed, and the council did not robustly defend the claim. It robustly defended the claim by paying the mayor £30,000 plus VAT. Chair, to the residents of Newham might think the word robustly has been stretched to the end of credibility. So, Chair, I think the section on the governance section surrounding the mayor's claim against the council is inaccurate. I have said to the monitoring officer, perhaps somebody might like to check the advice given to the council by external legal advice. I don't think that's been done, but I do not agree with this statement, Chair, at all. And also, Chair, what I would say, as a person of colour, this is the only time I felt the council has let down councillors of colour in this action. And that's the only time I've said that in my 16 years of being a councillor. It is the only time I've had to refer to my race in a matter of the council, which I think is quite a serious issue. And I will say, I don't think the council defended the rights of black male councillors during this matter, especially when I would say, Chair, a previous monitoring officer failed to follow advice of the council. On that matter, Chair, I will not vote for this. I'll vote against it, actually, Chair, on a matter of principle. Thank you.
Thank you. Those comments are noted. Would any officers like to have a right of reply on that, or?
Chair, I can confirm that we had a conversation, and I think we've agreed to disagree, but it was very amicable and very professional. As the Chief Legal Advisor for the Council, I respect Councillor Paul's view. He's absolutely entitled to that and entitled to express his opinion. However, I was not involved in London Borough of Newham at the particular time when these events occurred. I have checked the wording which appears here under the bold subheadings of issue and update 2025. My investigations have confirmed that this particular wording was agreed between the council's external legal advisors and the legal advisors appointed by the mayor. For point of clarity, there is a subheading in this element called Update February 2026. I have authored that because that is based on my involvement, picking up on the wording that was in here. But I'm afraid I can't comment any further than that to say, other than to confirm that this is wording that was agreed between the council and the external legal advisors. But I just wasn't here at the time and I can't really go into the details, I'm afraid.
One picture, I find it quite staggering, Chair, and I disagree with the monitoring officer's position, but I respect her as a professional. It's important I say that, okay? Because we've had a really good discussion. I find it quite staggering that a person who took the council to court then gets their solicitor to effectively gag the council in order to say what can and can't be said, right? Because that is the implication of what's been said. I find that deeply disturbing, and I find it even more disturbing when I know for a fact that the council obtained legal advice, which said there was no point for the claim, and even more worrying, there was no need to pay the mayor £30,000 plus VAT. That is public money. So I know the monitoring officer is saying she wasn't here, and she wasn't here, but it's an important principle. Yeah, right? A very important principle. If the council robustly defended its position, why did it pay £30,000 plus VAT? That doesn't sound to me robust, and it's not acceptable, but none of the legal advice given to the council was checked. I think that money was paid, perhaps not the word ultra virus, I'm not a lawyer and probably I'll get picked up for using that, but it should not have been paid.
Councillor Paul, thank you very much. Thank you for the respect and professionalism that we've aired those discussions. As I understand it, the matter is settled within the report through external legal advice. So I'm going to move us on from that in the interest of time, but your position is noted.
Thank you, Chair. And I respect.
Thank you very much.
And I'll say thank you, Chair, to the monitoring officer.
Yes.
We've had a numerous discussions, and I will say, and it's important I put this on record, I have
It's on record.
agreement with the report, but not with the advice of the monitoring officer. It's important I say that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to Councillor Chowdhury and then Joanne, I'll move to you.
So the council's experienced serious housing fraud that we've discussed before in this committee. That's questions around.
No,
That item is in the exempt part of the meeting. Move to that later.
Can I ask a general question like class 14?
No.
I would prefer we didn't.
What it says is in the public domain.
I would suggest that given that we have agenda items for it later, Councillor, if we can just go through the agenda flow, that would be very helpful given the agenda that we've got this evening. Thank you. Do you have another question? I can let you come in on a different topic.
I was going to ask a general question.
We'll come back to that later if that's okay.
Yeah, there's just, so page 13, I wonder if you could expand the plan in place to address the weaknesses in the housing service and the preparation of the working papers to support the financial statement. That's sort of repeated twice on page 13.
Do you have a paragraph reference? Sorry,
They're not referenced.
just the number of it, even just,
This page.
yeah.
It's the second paragraph
Yeah.
down.
Okay.
On the hard copy here.
Yeah.
So it's just above treasury management. After the leadership board on page, so I've got page 13 on this, or page 11.
Oh, yes.
Page 11.
Page 11.
Page 11.
Page 11, printed page 13.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
Is it the, so it starts the order?
Are we there?
That one.
That,
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, I think it's best that I answer the working papers one. Obviously, I've been appointed since the 5th of January 2006. Had conversations with the external auditors, and we will be having a wash up after the external audit posts this committee to understand how we're going to move forward, how we can make working papers more accessible for those that have not prepared them, how we can ensure that they're produced on time, they can be followed and tracked through in the best possible way. Being somebody that has reviewed working papers in my time, it's important that somebody that hasn't prepared them knows how to work their way through them. We've had conversations as a team, and we're ensuring that the team is resourced to be able to do that.
Thank you. Alexa?
I have a question both for section 151 and probably external audit, just about the fact that the 22-23 accounts won't be audited, and then we're moving on straight to 23-24. So I'm just wondering, how do you gain assurance over the opening balances for 23-24 without an audit of the closing of 22-23?
So shall I go first and then I'll hand over to you, Hayley. So as a result of the national backlog in external audits across the country, the government did a reset and recovery process with all audit firms so that there would be a catch-up that took place. Ideally, we'd all want our accounts to be audited to be able to give that public assurance to our residents and our communities that we have an unqualified true and fair view on our accounts. But this followed the pandemic, followed a number of different things, both a shortage in resources on both sides and the inability to catch up once it snowballed, I think is fair to say. So what was agreed here in this local authority is that the 22-23 would not be audited, the 23-24 would not be audited. I do understand that pension fund committee audits had added money in place in those years, but the full audit of the accounts hadn't taken place. Within the next item, we do reference how long it will take, according to our external auditors, in order to rebuild the assurances on the opening and closing balances over time. And in the external auditors report, they're signalling to us where they're able to build assurances and how long that will take. But they will, I think it's 27, 28 before, and assuming that everything goes well in that time. But I don't want to speak for external audit. We've got work to do to enable them to work that they need to do a couple of years of clear audits on all balances to be able to do it. But I'll hand over to Hayley, who can give the EY view.
Thanks, Maria. I mean, you've largely covered the majority of my points, actually. I think the simple answer around opening balances is that we don't yet have those assurances. So, as Maria's indicated, the main thing that we need to focus on now, coming out of multiple years of disclaimed opinions, is actually focusing on being able to get through what would be classed as standard audit work or plan procedures for one given year of the accounts. If we can do that, then we'll then be able to do the second year of accounts, which means that you're starting to naturally build back your assurances over the financial statement balances by completing multiple years. Once we've got 2 full years of planned procedures, we can start to then consider assurances around that historical opening balance position and the historical reserves in particular, and how we get assurance over that by performing risk assessment procedures and factoring in things like materiality. But we first need to be comfortable that the council can deliver what would be considered a normal audit within the audit cycle as those backstop dates start to also come forward.
That makes perfect sense. Also, I should just say, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, and some officers don't know me. I'm the new independent member. Alexa is my name.
Thank you. Any further questions on your governance statement? Then in that case, the recommendation is that the committee approve the annual governance statement for 2024-2025. So may I see by show of hands, is the recommendation approved?
Those in favour.
Oh, no, those in favour. All those in favour?
One.
I'll abstain.
Abstained. Councillor Calmer? Councillor Paul's laid out his position. Councillor Rush in favour? So then the recommendation is approved. Councillor Rush.
So all those four,
Councillor Rush was for.
one.
Councillor McCalmont and
Against
Chowdhury were abstaining,
Was one.
and against was Councillor
Ben.
Paul.
You've got one for and one against.
Yeah. Oh, Councillor Paul, can I just, is it an abstention or an against?
It's against.
Okay.
So the council,
One for and one against.
no, I can't see.
Can I defer to officers on procedure in this case?
Chair, I mean, it places us in some difficulty because the annual governance statement forms part of the statement of accounts, and it's a requirement that this committee notes, at the very least, notes the annual governance statement. So I wonder whether members might just want to consider that for a moment and think about their position again.
I think potentially in the abstentions, if there's any further questioning that might satisfy you to vote in favour of the recommendation this evening.
Might be worth coming back with an amended version to account for councillor Paul's valid critique.
Yes,
Councillor McCalmont.
Councillor Anthony McCormick, member for Royal Albert. Obviously, there is been some concerns with that, but because an apology, car broke down in the tunnel, so, and because I haven't been there for the full discussion, I am felt unable, and that's why I abstained rather than voting for or against.
Okay,
Yeah. So I thought that was a safer position to take.
thank you.
I was going to say, are there any questions that you might have, having read the papers, that we could answer that would help you? I appreciate that you arrived late, but we're more than happy to help.
In fact, I have some questions here that I have pen I would like to get answered.
Okay.
And this is obviously
Wasn't here for the whole debate, Chair.
pardon?
Wasn't here for the whole debate.
Chair, if I can just remind members, you're not being asked to endorse content necessarily. If the recommendation is to note the annual governance statement, that's a very gentle decision for the committee to take, to note the.
Isn't it to approve it?
Councillor.
The problem with that is that it will be our names that secondly vote for it. So if we
Yeah, my position will not change, if that's helpful.
That's good. That's clear.
And I suppose so basically it's a tie position, I take it right now, one for one again.
Right now, yeah, the motion's fallen.
Yes. And I have a few questions, but as I said, I wasn't here for the full consideration of that. And
Without intending to put you in a situation where you feel rushed, would you be able to concisely share your questions with officers?
Okay.
In the interest of time with the other items on the agenda? But you have to tell me whether you feel comfortable doing that, Councillor.
I mean, I can share with my questions by all means.
Sure.
And the number one question is they have of the 4 significant government issues being prioritized, and what measurable outcome or milestone are in place to ensure that they are resolved within clear timescales. So that is one. And I know I can go on to the next one if officers.
If officers can respond to that question for now, and then we'll come back to you for the second.
So the question was concerning work to ensure that the governance of the council is satisfactory. Is that the question?
Yeah, because it's prioritizing them, and now are we sure that they're going to be resolved within a clear timescale?
So the monitoring officer to my left, who arrived in September, is one of the most experienced monitoring officers in the country, and has previously held the role in the country's largest local authority in Birmingham. And upon arrival, she produced a monitoring officer's assurance report, which identified everything that she had found in coming to Newham. And Janie may speak for herself in a minute in terms of that found. But I think that in summary, the building blocks of a well-run, properly governed local authority are in place in Newham. And in fact, paradoxically, it probably would be any failure of the committee today to adopt the annual governance statement that will provide this most significant setback to the governance of the council. So we're right at the point of generating the most significant deficiency in our governance arrangements. So I mean, Janie may want to speak for herself, but in effect, the discussion that we're having now is could in itself become a significant disabling factor in the good governance of the local authority.
Thank you, Paul. Just to build on that, if I may, Chair. So I have 35 years experience in local government. I'm a qualified solicitor holding a valid practicing certificate. I've been a monitoring officer for 13 years and I've held some of the biggest jobs in the country. Birmingham, BCP Council, quite politically diverse and some would say quite distressed, quite distressed councils. Part of the monitoring officer's role is to act with complete independence and also ensure that the council is operating in accordance with its governance framework, which for this council is the Constitution. And that is also supplemented by following the legislation that supports the delivery of services and the delivery of council functions per se. As Paul has alluded to, I have produced an assurance assessment of the council. On the whole, I'm satisfied that the governance arrangements, the building blocks of a governance framework is in place. However, I did highlight some concerns. For example, and we will come on to this at item 16, Chair, which is around a framework for review of the Constitution using established committee frameworks, which is one of the amendments that I'm proposing for the terms of reference for this committee. There's some issues around the visibility of internal audit and the use of our internal controls to strengthen our governance framework. And there is also issues which have been raised in the annual governance statement, which is around the adding robustness to our shareholder function, which I think is referred to in AGS as LATCOs or council-owned companies. So I've asked for additional responsiveness around the robustness of the shareholder framework. I do continue to monitor the council's governance for my personal assurance and professional assurance, because I'm personally and professionally responsible for the decision making and the governance framework for the council. I can confirm that I've been given unfettered access to every single meeting that I've wanted to attend, and I've been provided with documents at request without any objection or questioning of that. I feel that I've come into this authority and have been given the sanction and the support to fulfil my role to the best of my ability. However, my role is ongoing. It's a bit like the AGS. It's kind of living and breathing and evolves every single day. And at this moment in time, the annual governance statement is a statement in time of events around 24-25 and has been updated since. It would cause me a significant concern if we were unable to note or have some form of tacit support for the annual governance today, because I feel that my professional opinion is that I feel that the council is in a different place now from when I arrived in September, and on reading the paperwork that I have, it is in a different place from 24-25 than it is sat here as the council's monitoring officer in February 2025. Just to give you a kind of a short going forward assurance as well, I hope in a meeting in June, subject to annual council setting the schedule of meeting dates, to bring a more formal assurance report to your meeting, which would then serve as hopefully robust but a significant piece of evidence to support the annual governance statement going forward as well, but also supports and confirms to the committee the purpose of my role in this organisation and give my assurance as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCallum, before I move to your next question, might I ask councillors if this were reframed as noting the report with comments recorded, would that change anybody's position in how we might move forward from this agenda item?
What do you
So-
have to do to approve it? Do we-
As I understand it, this is we can note the report with our commentary as opposed to something which is approved.
Chair, the report is the proposed recommendation that is put forward to you is to approve. It is the committee's gift if you prefer to consider an alternative recommendation, that may be to note. So you can do that as a committee if you wish, because this is a proposal, a recommendation that is put forward to you, and there are alternatives to consider. One of those could be to note. So you are entitled to do that, but you would need a seconder for that. This is an officer recommendation, so
Via you, Chair, what's the difference between note and approve?
Very much a layperson in this discussion, somewhat feeling
The monitoring officer perhaps, or the chief executive,
well.
give us what the implications are. I've been quite clear. I've appointed a principal where I'm not going to sign this report because of that section over the mayor's payoff, right? So, and I'm very clear on my position. For me, because I'm a principal. So before we talk about noting or approving, I want to be absolutely clear what the difference between noting and approval is.
We're into sort of definitions here. I mean, I think the committee's not able to amend the report. So the report is the report. I think that's a shared ground. Everyone understands that. The annual governance statement as it sits here, it can't be changed. It's gone through the auditing process. It is, in a sense, a matter of fact, although I respect the fact council report has got such significant concerns about one element of it that he wishes that to be recorded in some formal way. But I think in noting the report, and it's very common for committees of councils and councils themselves to note something, it means you don't necessarily, the members who are noting it aren't necessarily endorsing every element of what it, but it's accepting that the report has gone through due process, has been professionally generated to the best of the officer's abilities, and therefore it's accepting its validity, if you like, rather than necessarily approving its every page of the content. That would be my understanding of the difference. So I think it might be possible for any member, you know, they both noted the report but haven't necessarily endorsed every sentence within it.
So
Via you, Chair.
Yeah.
If we were to note, where would our comments be noted with the note?
formally in the minutes. So there'll be a
But
public,
not in the report when it goes to annual council though?
we can't alter the content of the annual governance statement, but your notes, the comments that you make will be recorded in perpetuity for the minutes.
Via you, Chair. In that regard, therefore, it doesn't make a jot of difference whether we note or approve, because when the report goes through to the annual council meeting, it will be said, it will be noted, our comments of difference will not be seen by anyone else.
right, I'm going to
Correct, Chair.
and then Councillor Chowdhury and then Councillor McCallum. Okay.
You, Chair, that this is the only destination for this report. It does not go anywhere else after this. This is the committee that is charged with the governance, and therefore that is why it's here. It does not go on to full council. It's not a full council report.
And maybe it's worthwhile, Chair, just to walk through the implications of not even noting the report.
Could we come to that momentarily, if you don't mind, Councillor Chowdhury?
It's really interesting because it's highlighted another governance flaw, I think, in the council. I've been on lots of committees before, often, always is the case that you should submit a draft report for approval. You shouldn't submit a final unamendable report for approval. That's rubber stamping, it's not approval, right? Approval should be you're able to amend it or reject it. But what we've been asked to do here is rubber stamp a report we can't amend. It's not a real, this is a false performance of governance, really, if you're not able to draft.
It's not,
Come to Maria.
If I can,
it's not correct.
if I can, through you, Chair, the draft report in the draft, with the draft accounts came to this committee in June. It's gone through an external audit and it's back here because it needs to be back to this committee to understand that this is the end of the external audit. The annual governance has gone through that clearance. If there is anything that is inconsistent with how the council is operating that the external auditors pick up, we have to make changes.
I don't think it'll-
And and we've updated, to the other point the council made, we've updated the latest position within the annual governance issues identified and also made reference to the annual governance issues from the previous financial year, 23-24, that hadn't yet been resolved. The idea is,
One second,
idea,
can you let her finish, please?
the idea is that once this comes to this committee, next year, when we get to the end of 25-26, we'll be producing the new annual governance statement. If there are any governance issues that have not been addressed as part of the 25-26 financial year, they will reappear in the annual governance statement. And anything new that's been picked up in the 25-26 financial year will be included in the annual governance statement. It's important that we reflect any governance issues. We also include the position from the internal audit so that you have that rounded view of governance as well.
Councillor Chowdhury, McCalmont and then Paul.
I'll make two quick points. So it's kind of irrelevant how many times it comes to this committee. If you're asking us to approve it, we should be able to amend it. It doesn't matter if it's okay, once or twice or 10 times, we should be able to amend it. Because you're asking us to approve something, put our name to it. Second point is, the reason I've abstained is Councillor Paul made a very good argument, which is if you're, the only way any committee member can make a decision is to put yourself in the shoes of a resident and listen to what we've heard from officers and what we have on our piece of paper. A resident would say, why was the mayor paid £30,000? What was this employment tribunal case? Blah, blah, blah. And Councillor Paul has highlighted that what's written here doesn't match up with the reality, as I understand it from this conversation, of what actually happened. So on that basis, it seems sensible to abstain on something that might be factually inaccurate. And there may be a good counter argument, but I haven't personally heard it from this conversation.
As I understand it, just in conversation, the officers are saying that the report did come to the committee for that review, with time therefore to come back with feedback and discussion ahead of an approval later on in the municipal year.
I don't think. Yeah.
I'm going to come to.
Just to add to that, I think in respect of the issue that Councillor Paul referred to, what the annual governance statement is doing is recording fact. Fact as officers understand it to be, and particularly something that cannot be changed. So it's reflecting reality, and that's, I don't know, what was the voting when it came in June? Do we have the record of that, of when the draft came? I don't know. I'm not sure whether it would have been when I arrived, a month before I arrived, whether the committee had a similar discussion at that point. But at this stage, just to reinforce the point, I'm trying to find the right words to describe it, would be exceptionally unusual, and I would say extraordinary, for a committee not to be prepared to note its annual governance statement. So I would urge members, again, if you feel able to at least note the annual governance statement.
And to your second point, I think that ties in with some other discussions around the situation with the mayor, and I think that will come up again. So I'm going to move to Councillor McCalmont for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Listening to this new round, my concern primarily is about governance arrangement and the poor governance arrangements that we have had in the past. What assurances, and as a committee member, I need assurances that we have adopted a new approach to governance that is more effective than it has been in the past, because in the past it wasn't effective. I hear what the MO is saying, that since she comes, the governance is in a different place. what assurances can you as the chief executive give to me that the governance framework going forward is robust and not just something on paper, but it's going to be effectively and robustly implemented going forward?
Well, thank you. Thank you through you, Chair. Thank you to the councillor for the question. I mentioned earlier that the monitoring officer has prepared a comprehensive evaluation of governance standards that she's found on arriving in the council last autumn. And I'm not sure, I think that maybe the committee hasn't seen that report. And I'm very happy to share it with the committee members. And so if this would help, we could circulate the monitoring officer's report to this committee. And I'm confident that when you read that report, councillor, it's very comprehensive and you'll be reassured about the governance standards that we have in place.
Okay, and Chair, just to add to that, and someone like myself who've sat through many meetings and so on, I know what the governance situation was. It, with hindsight, I suppose, on your behalf, which would have been helpful to have circulate that in advance, because everyone have their own issues. For instance, Councillor Paul is about the mayor payoff. Mine is about improve governance situation in the council, which is has been lacking in the past. And Chair, in the interest of time, because I know time is pressing on, I think I've already enough to come to a decision in terms of the way I'm going to go on this one, rather than
Okay.
If I had some question, but I think they've been, with the response I have heard, I think they've been ventilated.
Oh, then I'll move to councillor Paul and then Alexa.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. I was at that June meeting where the chief executive wasn't. I'll tell you what happened. The report came to us. The whole committee wasn't happy with the wording of the report. And we had a debate about whether the audit committee had the right to approve or whether we just note it. It got to a point where we were talking about the constitution. And it was proved on the night, but the audit committee has the final approval on the audit statement. At that meeting, there was a debate, which is consistent with what I said earlier. The committee in June was not happy with the wording around the mayor settlement. That is the bone of contention. Okay, that's what happened in June. Also, I would say, just for putting information, Chair, Councillor McCormick was part of the mayor's payoff, and he might need to, I don't know whether recuse himself or to consider what he says, because it's part of a process. But the point I want to make again, the audit committee is the final arbiter of standards within the council. Okay, the mayor took his own council to court and should not have been paid £30,000. That is a governance issue in light of the fact where the mayor sits in the governance architecture of the organisation. That is not being referenced in the report. Again, that is a serious breach and a lack of insight for residents. Also, we're being told that the mayor's solicitor is saying what we can or can't say in the report. Again, Chair, as an elected representative of the Borough of Newham, I object to being, how can I put it? My commentary is curtailed by legal advice I'm not party to. And that is a serious concern. And I say to the residents of Newham, one of the issues which they were talking about last year was the mayor's payoff. And it's not in the report. So again, look, to note, to approve, it is for the audit board always to approve, never to note. That is my recollection, 16 years of the council. Other people can do what they do, but I'm utterly clear and consistent, right? And Councillor McCormick was in the meeting in December 22, and he can confirm the mayor's legal action was not about that meeting. It was about the actions of the standards chair who wrote to the mayor about her conduct, and she objected to that. That is a fundamental point of difference. That is a factual error in the report, which is not contained in the report.
Okay.
And I don't know, I want to, Chair, make comments very neutral, very familiar.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I'm going to move to Alexa and then I'm going to ask the members a question.
Maybe it would be helpful, the chief executive was at one point going to outline what the impact would be if this didn't get approved. And maybe that would be helpful in terms of council's understanding on implications in terms of the seriousness.
I mean, I might ask our colleagues from external audit for their reaction to this, because I think it's incorporated within the statement of accounts, and without an approved annual governance statement, I suspect that would cause some difficulties. And I don't know, Hayley, whether you want to add to that, whether you can say anything, but I think it would be a significant factor for for yourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to come in. I mean, I think, you know, if the organisation, if as a council, if you cannot come to an agreement on whether you note, approve, but also that you've met the required governance arrangements to approve the financial statements as a whole, which do include the annual government statement, then I cannot issue you an audit opinion until you have gone through that process and you have approved them. Which means that you will not be able to meet the backstop date this week, so you will miss that.
Thank you.
And in turn, Chair, if I could, relating to that's important in its own right, but bearing in mind the MHCLG best value notice, and you know that becomes a very significant issue, I think, for the council's status. So I just want to be very clear about that. It would be a deeply significant moment this evening, and therefore members need to weigh that carefully.
Okay. Councillor Paul, can I ask you a point of clarity? Is this a matter? So in my mind, the facts are the facts. We may disagree on the procedures and the way that this has been framed, or the way that we've come to this point, and the checks and balances that we've had along the way. In your mind, is this a issue on statement of fact?
Yes, it is, Chair. In June, when we had the debate, I asked a simple thing, couple of things for some clarity, but the figure of 30,000 plus VAT, which is £36,000 paid to the mayor, was included in the report. That's what I asked for in June. Okay. Subsequent to that, I've been told, no, we can't do that, blah, 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 and it's got bigger. So for me, it is a factual thing. And as I pointed out in my initial remarks, the action by the mayor was due to a letter written by the chair, the standards boards to her, not by the action of a meeting by scrutiny in December 22. And Councillor McCormick was in that meeting. So you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm right. The figure of £30,000 plus VAT needs to go in the annual governance statement, because the mayor is at the top of the governance architecture in the borough, and it is important that residents know what happened and what the mayor was paid.
Okay. And my question now to officers, what can you explain in a way that residents would understand, and we might wish to defer to our external audit colleague, what is the reason that what feels to me like quite a reasonable request to add in almost like a byline, dare I say, of this is an additional statement of fact, this was the financial amount that was provided. It feels well, now I'm saying it out loud, that feels like a reasonable route forward. And I'm wondering why we're not going to do that.
Chair, I completely understand the frustrations, and the comments from Councillor Paul are not lost on me. We've had this conversation more than once. However, from a legal perspective, as a qualified solicitor with a practicing certificate, my hands are tied. This is an agreement that was drawn up between legal advisors representing the council and legal advisors representing the mayor, and I am not in a position to do that. That has already been agreed, and it was agreed some time ago in June. So I'm not,
but if I
hear your concerns, I'm not in a position to alter or create a different version of wording in this.
My challenge here, and
aspect.
my challenge here, and I'm looking for the point of clarity here, is this is in the public domain already, right? The financial amount that was provided to Mayor Fires. It's been discussed in a previous meeting, and I understand that the legal advice is that we shouldn't put it in. I'm struggling to get my head around why we can't add an additional line, which is something which is an additional statement of fact which is in the public domain, I don't understand how that would compromise the legal advice that we've received from either side, because the law is there to facilitate fairness and balance, and the facts are the facts. So
The law is there to do that, but this was an agreed form of words agreed between the two legal advisors at the time. In order to change the wording, I would need to go back to the solicitors to consult with them. I can't unilaterally change the wording.
well, can I just ask Councillor McCalmont, because he had his hand up, do you come in here?
But
The number.
Chair,
No.
Kerry, please. Yes, Chair, all I was saying, in terms of moving forward, because I'm aware of the time, Councillor Paul has raised an issue. Can it not just be in the minutes? Because obviously the minutes reflect that Councillor Paul have grave concerns about this. And I hear what the monitoring officers are saying. And Councillor Paul has concerns, which would be in the minutes. I said it's already in the public domain. It's already been aired. This is live, etc. It's in the minutes. And we then move on with the business.
I can't speak on Councillor Paul's part, but as I understand it,
I'm putting it to you, Chair. So
no, absolutely. The matter of contention at the moment is the fact that it's not listed within the report itself. I'm going to do one more question from Alexa, and then I want to ask everybody a question on noting.
We can't move on from this issue. Councillor McCormick, you are abstaining not because of this issue. So is there something that you can?
Because I wasn't abstaining on the issue of the mail payouts. I was abstaining on the issue of the governance and assurances, etc. And that has been ventilated already. The monitoring officer and the chief exec have addressed my issue. So therefore, really, because more of my question was about governance.
Fine. So we've got a supplementary.
You've maintained abstention.
Well,
no, where the vote has to be taken again, I suppose.
Chair, I mean, I think I heard the councillor say the vote needs to be taken again. I think that would be useful. And just to say, remind the committee, of course, this is being streamed. Therefore, the whole the interest of accountability and transparency being served by the discussion that members have had, and I'm sure the minute will appropriately record for the public record.
And just
concerns.
And Chair, what has missed because I wasn't at the beginning on this particular item when it all played out many moons ago, I was one of the 5 councillors that was consulted. We wanted decision makers, but we were consulted, and so in fact, the decision was made by the monitoring officer of the day, and I just put that out there so it's all go in on the record.
So I'm going to move.
It's not factually correct, Chair, but I won't make it.
We're going to move to asking the members again. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the annual governance statement for 2024-2025. So may I see by a show of hands those in favour of approving the report? 1, 2. Those who are abstaining? And those who are against? So then the motion has fallen. I think we will need to take this offline and move on to the statement of accounts and have a supplementary meeting on Friday. My challenge here, if I may, is that we may be at loggerheads here, and I wonder whether the officers may need to take some legal advice on the addition of this statement of fact, which please do.
If we take a vote to note it, does that solve the problem of you proceeding? So what you could do is record properly that that the committee failed to approve it, but decided to note it in the interest.
As I understand it from one of the other members, that won't be in the report in and of itself. So because as I understand, the officer's stance at the moment is that the report cannot be changed.
It'll be in the minutes.
It would be in the minutes. So if members who voted against approval would be inclined to note the report, we can go again to see if we can move forward.
I would vote in favour of noting it in the interest of saving the council further money by as long as it's properly recorded why votes were made against.
This is good to know things.
Does that enable the audit opinion to be issued if we note it? Is that correct?
I think it depends on the next item, to be honest with you. So when we get to the statement of accounts in its entirety, all of needs to be approved, not noted.
I'm going to reframe the,
How can we? So the next item is of two components. One, which is the statement of accounts, has to be approved. Then there'll be a section for the annual governance statement, which will be noted. I'm not sure how that plans out. You can have an approval and a noted and the same thing on an agenda item, right?
but would our external audit partner be the best person to answer that? Haley, did you catch that, or would you like me to summarise?
No, I did, but I don't think I can answer that. I think you need to check what your internal requirements are as to whether it's acceptable for you to note it in line with your governance requirements or for you to approve it. I don't think I can answer that one for you. The statement of accounts absolutely need to be approved, but the annual governance statement, I think you need to defer internally as to what your requirements are there.
Thank you. I'm going to move to reframe the question through noting the report for now, in the interest of time, and moving on to the next agenda item. But I think there is then an action on officers to come back and provide that clarity in a very short time frame on whether we can have a part of the annual governance statement noted and then statement of accounts.
Just for a point of clarity, and I suppose I'll be looking to the monitoring officer, as I understood it, the vote is 2 to approve and 2 against.
Yes.
Now, does the chair, and as an independent chair, does the chair have a casting vote or not?
No.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask members, by way of show of hands, noted. So those in favour of noting the report.
So I
Chair, would it help?
I don't quite see.
If we pause the meeting perhaps 10 minutes and allow us to have some breathing space, because we need to decide what the difference between noted and approval is. And perhaps a 10-minute break in the meeting will allow a compromise to be reached, because I'm keen to get to a compromise, but I've laid my principal objection up.
Thank you. Okay. I'm happy to move to a 10-minute break if officers tell me that that's appropriate and we're able to do so. I just want members to be aware that that will mean deferring exempt actions
Okay, let's carry on.
discussed this evening and any discussion around the year ahead forward plan, because we must cover terms of reference and the statement of accounts. So if you're in favour of deferring those items, can I just see by show of hands?
Yeah, Maria,
Sorry, I'm going to come to Maria first.
Those
Councillor, can we just move to Maria first about whether we can break?
I make a suggestion, Chair, through you. Why don't we just pause this item and move to the statement of accounts and have the debate on the statement of accounts, answer the questions on the statement of accounts, vote on the statement of accounts, and come back to this one. That would give.
I feel, and again, I don't want to speak on the member's behalf, but I feel that there wanted to be an off-the-record conversation perhaps, or some sort of discussion around this point, or is that not the intention, Councillor Paul?
I've just been helpful, whether a slight pause would allow the monitoring officer to do what she's got to do, and we can have a.
So what I might suggest then is we move on to the next item, go a break. We're going to move on to the next item now. We can come back to this, but I trust that officers will look at this whilst we're discussing. So item 5, or item 6 rather, we will come back to that. So now moving on to item 7, which is the final statement of accounts 24 and 25 and the external audit report. So I'm allocating 52 minutes to this item. And before we begin, I do want to place a procedural matter on record. So members will be aware that the statutory backstop date for approval and publication of the statement of accounts is the 27th of February. This committee was moved from the 11th of February to the 25th of February to accommodate this timetable. However, the statement of accounts were not published within the usual 5 clear working days notice to members. So I've sought advice from the monitoring officer and the section 151 officer regarding the procedural position and the implications of the timetable. So it's important to be clear that this committee must only approve the accounts if members are satisfied that they've received sufficient assurance and that the statutory deadline does not override that responsibility. So I'll now invite the section 151 officer to provide some context behind the timing of the publication, but also to introduce the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I think this is the first year of an audit in terms of since the backstop dates have been put in place by external auditors. It's really important to highlight that there's been a period of 2 disclaimed audits that the council has received, 23 and 2023. So 24-25 audit will be the first one. There's a lot of work that's been undertaken throughout this year and including this week to get to this point. It's an unusual year and we anticipate that in future we will be in good time. This is a very unusual year. So I completely understand the position of members and the finance team for the council and the external auditors have been working up until today, which is why you've seen made even to the annual governance statement. It's important for me to flag here that there are a number of recommendations that external are making as part of the accounts, and I'm going to hand over to our external auditors who will be able to talk you through recommendations. I want to highlight a specific that I've already mentioned, but it sits within paragraphs 2.3 in terms of how the financial year's worked, where the backstop dates are going to be, so that members are cited as to how the sequence of events will work. Members will recall there were times where the auditing of accounts was much swifter, but there are different requirements that are expected now of our external auditors. And we're also working through trying to reach those assurances on the balances across the board so that the external auditors can be in a position where not only they conduct a normal audit, but they're in a position where they can rebuild their assurances on the balances, and we can see a possibility of an unqualified opinion in terms of true and fair view. As the members know, I've taken over as Section 151 officer from the 5th of January. So it's important that we're working together collectively and the auditors to move things forward in the right way. I'm going to hand over to external audit to explain.
Thank you. So if I maybe just take a little bit of time just to talk members through the our report, given the when it arrived to the committee. So the audit this year has been conducted within the National Reset and Recovery Framework that's designed to clear the local audit backlog. And for 24-25, as we've just mentioned, that statutory backstop date is the 27th of February, which is Friday. Whilst we have been able to progress assurance in some areas of the audit, unfortunately, we haven't been able to fully complete before the backstop date. That combined with the continuing impact of prior year disclaimers on opening balances, as we talked about earlier, that impact the comparatives, mean that the form of opinion for 24-25 will be a disclaimer, which is a form of modified audit opinion, and that's consistent with that received in 2022-23 and 2023-24. Our report referenced the fact that we were still going through some review procedures. That continues to be the case, and we are in the process of closing down our audit work and file at the moment and are working hard alongside officers to sign by the end of the week. As such, there may be some amendments that we need to make to our final audit results report that we will circulate background officers and clearly background the committee as well, so that you can see those changes. I don't consider any of them to be significant. It's certainly not going to alter anything in terms of the form of opinion we're giving, given that is a disclaimer, and it certainly won't impact the significant weaknesses that we report in our report around value for money. So in relation to value for money, we will be reporting by exception on 2 significant weaknesses, and those are related to 2 areas around governance over statutory financial reporting related to the financial statements process, and governance over property compliance for the HRA housing following the C4 rating that was received in October 2024. Now, both of those items were also reported in our 23-24 audit report. The reason they are recurring in 24-25, particularly around the rating, is mainly around the timing of that in because we cover, in relation to our VFM arrangements, we are covering the period from the 1st of April through to the 31st of March 2025. And because that happened during the course of that year and a fairly significant proportion of that year, it has impacted the value for money arrangements as we've reported for this year. I think perhaps if I just touch on a couple of points of detail in our report, and clearly I am then happy to take questions. Section 2 of our report, which starts on page 14, summarises the audit status and key risks identified in our audit replanning report that came to the audit committee back in June last year. Whilst we've been able to perform some procedures to address elements of the risks identified due to our inability to complete all planned procedures, there are a number of areas where we haven't been able to complete all of our required risk work there. Section 5 of the report, which starts on page 37, sets out the summary of misstatements. Now that covers areas where we have been able to undertake some audit work and conclude on that audit work. We've set those out, and that management have agreed to make those changes, and we are just checking those through the financial statements. I would like to just draw the committee's attention to the fact that we do have one additional identified misstatement for a value of £5 million, which relates to the movement in pension fund assets that were audited as part of the pension fund audit. What we need to do is, because the council has a share of those assets through their being an admitted body into that scheme, we need to take that into account in terms of the figure that then appears in the council's financial statements. That will be an uncorrected misstatement based on our conversations with management. It is not material, but it will just need to be listed as an uncorrected item in the letter of representation, and that's consistent with the treatment that you're seeing for those items in the pension funds audit results report as well. Section 6 of our report summarises the control observations arising from our work, and that starts on page 39. In summary, those recommendations focus on strengthening financial controls, the quality assurance processes, process improvements, improving documentation and underlying audit evidence, and enhancing some of the reconciliation processes that we've observed throughout this year's audits. And then the last two areas that I think I would touch on is just Appendix A and Appendix B, and they start from page 50. So Appendix A sets out the potential timeline for returning to an unqualified opinion. So to the conversation that we had earlier, assuming the council is able to support the completion of all planned procedures in each year, we anticipate that that timeline could be achieved by 27-28, but clearly there is a need to make sure that we are able to conduct the audit each year and complete all planned procedures. At the moment, the council is behind the expected anticipated timelines that were originally set out by the National Audit Office when the arrangements first came into place for the reset and recovery of the backlog in local audit. Appendix B then sets out the indicative assurance matrix at the time of drafting this report. So this is where we have been able to undertake audit procedures. We're starting to set out where we have been able to complete all planned procedures. Now there is a lot of work that has gone into the process this year, so I think what you are seeing is an improvement journey in terms of the level of assurance that we've been able to achieve this year compared to the previous year. And I did just want to take this opportunity just to thank Munir, Andrew, Maria, Conrad from previously, and the rest of the finance team and other council employees for their support throughout the process. I do just want to stress, though, that it is important to note that the council does need to be able to support the audit process such that all audit procedures across the financial statement areas are complete for a minimum of 2 years before we can start to consider moving away from a disclaimed audit opinion either to qualified or unqualified, and before we can start to consider the build back of the historic reserves position. So I did just want to make that clear to the committee in terms of Newham's current trajectory. I've touched on the value for money elements previously, so I think what I will do is I will pause there, and I'm more than happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
So are there any questions on the report from members? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Hayley. My question is about, in terms of our best value notice, financial stability is one of the issues. My question is about, have we got sufficient resources in the organisation to continue to provide the work we need to do to deliver the statements on time, and in order to show, resilience? So my question is about, have we got the right resources in the right place? What could we do better to have an even better process of collating our statement of accounts going forward?
You, Chair, I'm happy to come in, but it might be helpful for perhaps Maria to come in the first instance.
Thank you, Hayley. Apologies. Sorry.
So I've been assessing what we're going to be doing moving forward for the audit and the preparation for the accounts and the audit for 25-26. So one of the things that I've been talking to the team about, and we've already brought in additional resources to ensure that we are underpinning the areas that we have been identified here, and we're very clear we're going to have a wash up with the auditors to be clear about how we can present information to make it easily accessible. I think there's also an element of, for all councils, if you haven't had an audit for a couple of years across the board, you're out of practice. And when you're involved, and it's not a reflection on anyone, it's more about when you're know that you're starting, you know exactly how it works, and you know how you're going to finish up. And some of the requirements changed about how we present and the disclosures. Having said that, I believe the resourcing that we're going to put in place and the way that we will work as a council, because you'll see from the report that there's a responsiveness from the finance team that is just fine. However, there is a responsiveness from the rest of the organisation that needs to be improved. So we are going to ensure that that's the case. The finance team will be the conduit between the auditors and the rest of the organisation. The auditors will still be able to talk to the rest of the organisation, but in terms of collating the information, chasing the information down, it will be done from a central hub, and we will resource that to be able to do it. And I think it's about efficient, smart working. We just all need to be clear about how we prepare things so that they're easily accessible, and how we work together. So if the auditors can't follow a particular working paper, that they contact a member of staff, you know, there are things like that we will work in real time for. And I think it's about being clear about the expectations and where we're trying to get to. So, and the monitoring of the progress of the audit as well is something that Hayley's team and my team will do together to ensure that we do not fall behind in those timeframes, and where we've got issues that come up that need to be resolved, that we're working harder in those periods. My team and I have been talking about it for Andrew online as well. It's a really important part of how we operate as an organisation, and I would like us to move to a position where our residents and our communities and you as members have the external auditors' assurances with an unqualified, true and fair view, as well as my signature on the accounts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Chowdhury and then Councillor McCallum.
Okay, thank you for producing this report as well. My question is about the risk of material misstatement 5 in the executive summary. It says here that you are not able to gain assurance over the validity of a £10 million bank reconciliation. Can you just explain what that is a little bit more?
Yeah, so there have been in the audit of cash and bank, there have been some challenges caused by certain issues during the year. So there are some items on the bank reconciliation that have taken some time for the finance team and ourselves to work through. I think, and it may be helpful for Munir or Andrew to potentially come in and maybe provide a little bit more information, because I think officers have now been able to reconcile those balances and substantiate them. Unfortunately, we have just run out of time to finalise the audit work over those as we've been approaching the backstop date. So there is a lot of work that has gone into the cash and bank reconciliation this year. There has been that there is a significant amount, or there was a significant amount of allocated cash that has been started to work through and cleared out, and there has been a system glitch during the course of 24-25 that has also contributed to how that bank reconciliation has been prepared, but also where the audit evidence and support that is coming from.
Yeah, we, as Hayley said, we had an issue with one particular bank file that wasn't resolved into the new financial year. We had large banks that we had to create creditors for to put them in the right place in the last year. So there were some large numbers going through reconciliation and some prior year balances going back for a number of years that hadn't been cleared out that we are working to clear down now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. This is a question for Ailey. Ailey, this council in the last couple of years or so has been doing short-term crisis management in terms of our finance, especially in terms of temporary accommodation, children and adult services. How confident are you in terms when you look at the figures and what is proposed that we are on a positive trajectory of stabilizing our finances going beyond this year and next year?
So it might be helpful to just clarify our responsibilities when it comes to looking at financial sustainability, because we don't audit the budget. So we don't audit the budget, we don't audit the savings. What we are required to do under our value for money responsibilities is to look at the arrangements that the council has in place and ensure that as an organisation you're doing as much as you possibly can and there are no indicators of significant weaknesses in those arrangements. In terms of looking at your budget setting and how you go about, your savings plans and dealing with the ongoing financial monitoring throughout the course of the year. So apologies, Council, I don't think I'm going to be able to potentially give you the answer that you want on that because we don't look at the robustness of the outcomes.
Okay, but you mentioned risk and you just said that you haven't seen any significant risk in terms of value for money.
In terms of the arrangements that are in place, so the process that the council goes through, we didn't identify a significant weakness. We did in our auditor's annual report, which is, I think it's Appendix 5 that was sent to you. We have set out a more detailed commentary around our view on the arrangements in place, and there is some detail around financial sustainability and what we have seen the council do. We do have a recommendation in there. So whilst we haven't raised a significant weakness, we do have a relatively strong recommendation around the challenges that the council is facing and the need to take urgent action to address them.
Thank you.
Move to the office. You may build it.
Yes, I think it's part of my responsibility to the council, and in the budget, while we're not here to talk about budget and policy, it's important for me to highlight. So the Section 25 statement that I've written is Appendix A that's on the council agenda for tomorrow. Is my report to you all as members on the robustness of the budget estimates and the adequacy of reserves. That's where you need to look for that assurance. Equally, at the end of the financial year, when we have the financial outturn report, our ability to stay within our budget and what our outturn is, we're currently forecasting an underspend of £8.2 million as at period 8 that was reported in January. I look to see that continues to the end of the financial year and actually possibly even grows. The other thing that you need to look at is that we do not need exceptional financial support in order to balance our budget for 26-27. I appreciate this is not a policy committee, so I'll make this brief. We've balanced the first 3 years of the medium-term financial strategy in a sustainable way, and our earmark reserves position is outlined in my report, but also in an appendix in terms of that financial resilience as well as the sustainability. And financial management will be reported at the end of the financial year as part of outturn. So those key things are the things that you need to be looking for.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Any further questions, members? John?
Yes, I was just wondering on very specifically around assessment of controlled environment. One of the comments is that there's the weakness in the preparation of the financial statements and associated quality processes. And as part of that, our responsibility to ensure that there are sufficient plans in place. Could you just expand a little bit on the assurance around that identified weakness?
Yes, so we are reviewing a new financial timetable in terms of closing the accounts, and the assurances that I'll be receiving, including an analytical reviews on each of those areas, any significant changes from one year to the other that are picked up in the analytical reviews, the information that will need to be sought to give me the assurance that I can sign to understand why we've got those differences and we're making those changes. Quite often when you do the analytical reviews, it throws up things that possibly have been posted to the places and give you that oversight. It's also important to ensure that the financial statements actually feed through correctly into the notes and that the addition, the maths across the accounts is correct as well. So there's a number of assurance checks, including those that are not involved in the accounts, reviewing the accounts, because sometimes when you're involved in something, you see the number that's expected to be seen as opposed to what's actually there. So there's a number of assurances in terms of the internal control environment as well. Generally, the annual internal auditor's opinion will be provided to assure on that. And at the moment, we've had a limited assurance in 24-25, which is something that we absolutely need to improve on and that the council is working towards, but we've got other items on the agenda that pick that up.
Great. Are there any further questions from members on the statement of accounts? Okay. So then I've been provided with a reframed recommendation to the committee, which takes into account the annual statements that we've just reviewed, or the statement of accounts rather, as well as the annual governance statement. So the recommendation to the committee is that we approve the London Borough of Newham 2024-2025 Statement of Accounts, Appendix 1, and noting the annual governance statement. We approve the management response to the recommendations in the audit results report. We note the audit results report, which is Appendix 2. We note the annual audit report, which is Appendix 3. And we note the pension fund audit results report, which is Appendix 4. We approve the letter of representation for the London Borough of Newham accounts, which was Appendix 5, which was shared with us today. And we approve the letter of representation for the Newham Pension Fund, which is Appendix 6. Would it be helpful for any members for me to repeat that? Because I appreciate that was quite a lot.
But we need to say why, if we're seeking to approve the statement of accounts.
Yeah.
But noting the governance statement, for clarity, don't we need to say why we are noting rather than approval?
I will ask officers. I imagine the response will be that this is minuted and on record.
So, Chair, in suggesting that wording, we were going back to the terms of reference for this committee and the requirements on the committee, which say that the council is required, or the committee is required, to approve the statement of accounts. And at another point in the terms of reference, it refers to the annual governance statement. Obviously, it doesn't envisage this level of complexity and difficulty. So we think that we would be within the terms of reference of the committee if you're prepared to adopt that resolution that approves the statement of accounts within it, because it's then within it the annual governance statement. So that's an effort to recognise the annual governance statement at that point is attached and a part of the statement of accounts.
So
Councillor Paul?
it's not approve the governance statement, Chair.
So can you repeat that?
A more accurate statement would be to note and not approve the annual governance statement.
I'm going to ask Maria to come in briefly, if that's okay.
One more request for the committee, if that's okay. Given that the external auditors are finalising their work and the idea is that we will be signing tomorrow, there may be the odd thing that changes. The external auditor already made reference to that. In the covering report, in the recommendations, we didn't anticipate it at the time, so we didn't ask for any delegations. I'd be seeking a delegation to myself and to yourself as chair for any minor changes that need to be made, that we can make them so that the opinion can be signed tomorrow and that we can sign the accounts. So it would be an additional recommendation that would need to be there to delegate to the Section 151 officer and the chair to make any minor additions, minor changes that come through from the external auditors in order for the statement of accounts to reflect what it needs to for us to sign.
Okay,
Chair, there are a number of members who aren't present this evening, and I believe one is on their way. So maybe I don't know if it's possible to return to this when that councillor arrives.
Chair, what I'll say, that circumvents the will of this meeting, waiting for one councillor to turn up in the hope of getting a majority. Chair, the sticking point, and you wonderfully summarised it earlier, it's in the public domain about the money paid to the mayor. It was a sticking point in June, and where we are. And I say it again, Chair, for us to sit here and to be told that the mayor's solicitor is gagging what this committee can or can't do raises concerns. And as you said, Chair, the figures in the public domain. All I wanted was a factual representation, figures contained in the annual governance statement. Now I'm aware, I'm a lone voice and that might not be the case, but it's a factual statement, Chair. And I say it again, Chair, just to wait for one member to turn up, which I find quite interesting, because the chief executive might have been on the phone and to get that information. But I find it quite interesting, Chair, that the will of this committee is attempted to be circumvented.
thank you. Councillor McCallum.
Chair, just to say, the suggestion of Councillor Paul before to have a 10-minute recess so members can have a discussion. I think that's a valid one. What you did say at the time is that you were going to take the accounts item and then go back to this position, because obviously I, for one, am mindful of time, and the guillotine is going to fall on this in a few days' time and it must be sorted. So if we can get this matter dealt with, and in terms of what Councillor Paul is saying, perhaps that 10 minutes might be useful for us to have that discussion offline.
And Chair, would it be helpful if we sign, sorry, Chair, would it be helpful if we approve the accounts? Because I don't think there's a contention there. That's half the battle.
I don't think that would be helpful at this point, and I don't think a 10-minute break would be helpful.
Okay.
I'm going to come to Councillor Chowdhury, and then I have to make an intervention.
Can I just ask a quick clarification of the chief executive? How do you know that there's another councillor coming, and why are they coming 2 hours late?
I think the reasoning is probably quite openly obvious. So I'm going to move on to an intervention very briefly. The intervention I need to make is that we are approaching 9:30 p.m. and under rule 8.2, business is not concluded. So I have to take a vote on whether this meeting will continue. As I explained earlier, we have to vacate the town hall by 10 p.m. So all those in favour of continuing the meeting after 9:30 p.m, please raise your hand. Yes, thank you very much. So that's noted. We can continue to 10 p.m. So I'm going to move to the next agenda item because we do need to approve the terms of reference of this committee in order that it can go to full council tomorrow evening. So we will return to item 6 and 7. Please.
I thought I heard you say, through your chair, I thought I heard you say go to full council tomorrow evening. This report's not going to full council.
No, sorry, the terms of reference
Pass.
go to full council tomorrow. So I want to make sure we at least get turned to that, if that's okay. Is that accurate though? It is, okay.
Thank you. So the Chair, the terms of reference would not go to full council tomorrow because that's budget council, but they will go in March.
Okay, fine.
To full council in March, so that subject to approval. Sorry.
So yeah, Alexa.
Sorry, you keep going.
Okay. So I don't want to preempt the views of full council, but subject to their approval, the amendments will be made subject to your debate this evening in the constitution for the start of the municipal year from annual meeting.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'll move to Alexa before moving on to this.
Yeah, I'm non-voting. Is there a need for us to stay till?
If you need to leave, that's absolutely fine. And feel free to leave whenever you need to. That's right. Thank you. Right, so we're now going to consider item 16, which is the terms of reference of the Audit and Governance Committee. I'm going to take that report as read, and I will allocate 5 minutes to the item. I had a very constructive and good conversation with the monitoring officer this week about the changes that have been proposed. and I think they seem extremely sensible and provide lots of points of clarity. But Jenny, if you'd like to give some context.
I previously referenced that my assurance report and the chief executive referenced my assurance report. There is a couple of weaknesses in there, and by proposing this amendment to the terms of reference, those weaknesses will be improved. The first one is that the council's procurement activity is quite substantial, but across the council's constitution, there isn't actually a member-led forum that offers oversight to the procurement policies and strategies and the contract standing orders. I'm proposing that the terms of reference are amended so that this committee, Chair, would have oversight of the council's strategic policy and delivery of the council's procurement activity. It's not to get involved in the operational matters of who do we buy, I don't know, pencils from, etc. But it's to look at the contract standing orders and our procurement related waivers, policies, practices, etc. And also to provide an update with the legislation. The government introduced new legislation quite some time ago. It was recently enacted, and then almost as soon as it was enacted, the government announced that it was again reviewing the procurement legislation, so the public contract rules. So they are under significant change, and it's appropriate for a committee to have oversight of those. The second issue that I had concerns with was the Constitution Review Working Group. The Constitution Review Working Group, I think some members will recall, occurred and its role is to report to full council. It's a cross-party group of members to report to full council on changes to the constitution. Sadly, the Constitution Review Working Group, in my professional opinion, wasn't actually constitutionally competent, in that it was a private meeting. It didn't actually report its findings anywhere. It wasn't proportionately constituted. So I'm therefore suggesting, Chair, subject to this committee's approval, that oversight for supporting me in the review of the Constitution is within the terms of reference of this committee. And I feel that that would help strengthen the assurance framework and make our governance arrangements more robust. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions, Joanne?
Just as your assurance about the actual scope, the amount of work that's coming through this committee, and particularly sort of the extra support around the area, there will be extra support for training.
Yes.
In order to do that job correctly.
Yes, there will. The chair has also met with the chair of standards. Sorry to.
Oh, no, please.
But the chair has met with the chair and vice chair of the standards committee today. The standards committee are overseeing a comprehensive refresh of the councillors' induction programme and the member development programme. And there are sessions established right through until April 2027. As the chair has, I don't want to speak on your behalf.
No, please continue.
The chair has discussed with the chair and vice chair of standards committee today the appropriate provisions for training for this committee and also for the wider member and co-opted member cohort as well. So I'm sure the chair will work in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the standards committee to ensure that training is a priority for the committee.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this? Great. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the revised terms of reference for the Audit and Governance Committee and recommend the revised terms of reference to Council for adoption into the Council's constitution. So may I see by a show of hands, are the recommendations agreed? Full house. Thank you very much. Thank you. So items 8, 9 and 10, as we've agreed previously, since the publication of the agenda, have been deferred to the next meeting of the committee, which is 11th of March. And the items that have been deferred to the 11th of March, which is chaired by the Vice, is item 8, the quarterly internal audit update, item 9, the quarterly update on risk management and the risk register, and item 10, the quarterly counter fraud update. So moving on to item 11, which is the year ahead forward plan. So I'm taking the report as read.
Yeah.
I'm allocating just 2 minutes to this item. But since publication, a further item has been added to the March meeting, which will be a review of the fraud policy and the money laundering policy. So are there any questions on this report? Councillor Allen, do you need to note his arrival? Alan. So,
No questions on the board.
sorry,
No questions on the board, is that now?
there were no questions on the forward plan. No.
So I move to agree it then, Chair.
Agree the forward plan?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, apologies.
The wording, go to the harder word.
Right, so we'll now return back to the substantive items, 6 and 7 of the agenda. So before we deferred the item and carried on, I'd outlined a resolution, a recommendation to the committee, which sought to come to an agreement. The opening line of that being that we would approve the statement of accounts and note the annual governance statement. So before we enter that, are there any brief and concise questions, not statements, please? Any further questions that anyone would like to ask?
I'm
Councillor Chowdhury McCalmont and then Paul, if that's okay.
To repeat my earlier question, which is why a councillor was showing up 2 hours late, presumably to vote in favour and second the will of this. Having not been involved in the debate, I think identifies a quite significant governance flaw in this audit committee.
I think your comment is noted. As I would understand it, and I'll maybe defer to officers on this, a member of the committee would be entitled to join the committee at any point during ordinary running.
Were they asked to by an officer?
Chair, I'm not
Where?
welcome to councillor that has arrived.
But they just decided to come 2 hours late. How did you know they were coming?
I'm not prepared to be interrogated in that way.
Okay, I think your point is noted. We'll move to Councillor McCalmont.
Thank you. I don't wish to get involved, but I think the member question is quite inappropriate and make serious inference, and that's all I would say on that. All I want to know, Chair, noting and approving, I just need again a concise explanation as why we're going down to noting rather than approving, and also my colleague who just turned up might benefit from that explanation.
Chair, shall I try and summarise which
Please, if you may.
perhaps a hazardous thing to do under the circumstances, but if I try and summarise for the councillor who's joined me, I think behind me, the committee's debated at some length the annual governance statement, and it's not within the committee's remit to amend the annual governance statement. It is here as it appeared in draft back in July. It's now been subject to audit. It's here for the committee's adoption, ideally. There was a very long debate, councillor, about the annual governance statement, and reservations were expressed, serious and significant reservations were expressed, particularly by Councillor Paul, about elements of the annual governance statement, and the committee was running into difficulties in a decision to approve the annual governance statement, and so in an effort to help the committee, officers suggested a sort of softer form of wording, which would be to note it, but our preference would have been the original wording that annual governance statement was approved, and then the committee would move on to the statement of accounts, which incorporates the annual governance statement within it. So they're packaged together, the statement of accounts, the annual governance statement. So the responsibility of the committee is to consider if it approves the statement of accounts and the annual governance statement. That's really what is in front of the committee, and officers have tried to explain that not to do so would be a very significant thing, because it would leave the auditors who are online joining us on Teams on the screen. It would leave the auditors in a position of the council, in effect, its audit committee not having approved the statement of accounts. That's an important and fundamental point in the governance council. So, in summary, the proposition from officers is that accounts, including the annual governance statement, is approved. It's the officers and intent to say to you members that that will be the right to action.
Thank you. So I'll move to the resolution, the recommendation to the members. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the London Borough of Newham 24-25 Statement of Accounts, which is Appendix 1, and note the annual governance statement.
Sorry, Chair, that was the amended recommendation, but they asking for the original.
Yeah.
The statement of accounts approved.
Approved first.
Is that correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So my understanding is that you want to first take a vote on the original recommendation, which is to approve.
Yes.
So that amendment is not being presented at this time.
Okay,
So it's the original recommendations.
so then we move to item.
Yeah, just to clarify, is that the one we voted? This is the third vote on the same recommendation, is that correct?
Understand it, yeah.
Right, okay.
So we'll start with then the recommendation of item 7. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the London Borough of Newham 24-25 Statement of Accounts, which is Appendix 1. We approve the management response to the recommendations in the audit results report 24-25. We note the audit results report 24-25, which is Appendix 2. We note the annual audit report 24-25, which is Appendix 3. We note the pension fund audit results report 24-25, Appendix 4. We approve the letter of representation for the London Borough of Newham accounts, Appendix 5. And we approve the letter of representation for the Newham Pension Fund, Appendix 6. But that we also approve the delegation to the Section 151 officer and the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee to approve any minor additions that may come through from the external auditors. So may I see by a show of hands those in favour of those recommendations? So if those in favour could please raise your hand, those recommendations.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 3 in favour.
3 in favour.
Yeah, that means
3 in favour. Those against the annual statement.
that 1 against.
1 and any abstentions?
1 against.
1 abstention.
So 1 against and 1.
Okay.
Okay, so
So that item has been
the original recommendations.
approved. So we now must revert back to item 6, which concerns the annual governance statement. And I'll put to members again the question of the resolution. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the annual government statement for 24 and 25. So may I see by show of hands if you approve the annual governance statement this evening? That's 3. And those who are against?
1 against.
1 and the abstention, any abstention? And an abstention. Thank you very much. Right. We've covered 8, 9 and 10. We also discussed item 11. Yeah, which takes us to item 12, which is the date of the next meeting. So the date of the next meeting has been rescheduled, and please ensure that this is reflected in your diaries to the 11th of March 2026. The Vice Chair, Councillor Paul, will be chairing that meeting. And once again, there is a later start time of 7:30 p.m. to accommodate observers of Ramadan. So is that date noted? Could I see by show of hands, please? Yes, yes, nods. Thank you very much. Okay, item 13. So in order to freely consider the remaining items, I propose that any press or public be excluded from the meeting to the extent that exempt information as described in Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 is likely to be disclosed. So is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Paul. And then may I see by show of hands if that's agreed? Yes, thank you very much. So that concludes part 1 of tonight's business. Before we go into part 2, the private session, I'd like to wish good night and thank you very much to anyone who joined us this evening on YouTube. And members, if we can please wait for the clerk to verbally confirm that the live stream has ended before we move to the next item.
Yeah, it's good. It's,